Hello, friends of Herbie, and welcome back to the Campfire Talks with Herbie. I have with me today a new guest. It is Mario Latreille. Mario, hello. Are you there?
I was on mute, but now I'm here. Yes, Steve.
That's good. I was also reminded recently you should not be on mute when you're doing a broadcast, and that's a very good advice. So, Mario, I know you've been working on very large projects with all sorts of methods and approaches, and recently you have discovered TameFlow. But tell us a bit more about yourself. Who do you work for? Who are you? What are you doing in life?
Okay, well, currently I'm on, let's say, a combined few assignments overseas, working from North America, currently in Montreal. But when COVID is over and done with, I'll be back in Germany, actually, for a little while on those assignments over there. I'm also working on an advisory role with a startup called Protogo here in Montreal. But it is advisory, and it's a pro bono type role with that startup that I'm invested in, to be honest. But overall, so what brought me here and what the history is with my background is I like to think I bring a mix of experience and theoretical knowledge through about 20 years of delivery on large scale assignments. So leadership and facilitation on large scale projects and programs. And gradually got into quote unquote agile or agility.
How did you get into the agile part? And what brought you to the agility?
Yeah, so I started my career in wireless telecom, building out or working on teams that were building out brand new networks back in the late 90s and early 2000s. The work, the wireless telecoms companies, organizations are inherently, or at least back then definitely were inherently agile in the mindset. So delivery was based on MVX, minimum viable networks at the very beginning, having to bring in revenue as soon as possible. So focusing on coverage, maximizing coverage before focusing on capacity. So let's get a network out there, let's get some revenue. And what does that mean? How quickly can we get some revenue? Well, that's with an MV, right? Minimum viable something. Then in the late 90s, I met somebody by the name of Jean-Marie Famille, who had developed an approach that he called the FGT approach to delivering projects. And it was a kind of a lean project delivery approach and very centered around individual accountability and extending the typical scope, budget, and schedule, if you will, and quality triangle in traditional project management and extending it with business objectives. So what we call today outcome thinking, extending it to satisfaction of the team, stakeholders, and management. And he called it the approach the 8. So there were 8 critical success factors. The last one I've just named 7, but the last one being with a final evaluation, so retrospective. But just the inclusion of business objectives being the pivot or the most important factor in delivering a project, you had to deliver with a certain outcome mindset, really dictated that in that traditional triangle, the buffer would be in scope. So schedule and budget were fixed. Scope was what you could play with. So a little bit, I guess that might ring some bells with some people today when we talk about backlog and what we're delivering. For those of you adopting or having adopted Scrum, you have your iteration timeframes, and then at the end of an iteration, you show value. That date doesn't change. So it was kind of the beginning for me of that sort of approach, formalized, if you will. And then from there, I just gradually started studying and got into more, let's say, prescriptive agility practices, Scrum being the first one, then getting in heavily into Kanban. And then finally, very recently, as you mentioned, I'd say over the last year, getting involved with the TameFlow approach.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question. Of course, the question is, do you make a living in Agile? And of course you are. But how about TameFlow? Is TameFlow playing a role? Will it play a role? How do you see it in your like professional development in this industry?
Right. So if we look at it, I guess holistically with the small bag of tricks that I've been certified with, so Scaled Agile Framework being one, PMI as well with the dad in PMI now, Discipline Agile, and TameFlow is I adapt to the context. So it doesn't matter whether a client or a customer of mine is a fan of a specific framework or not. I like to think that I'm very context specific. Now, nobody's perfect, and I do have some preferences, if you will, but I did find that TameFlow adapts itself to pretty much any context. It's bringing in some of those more advanced concepts. It takes a bit more time with TameFlow, but as far as Kanban is concerned, and that next level of Kanban, which I like to call, which is TameFlow, that does apply pretty much to any context.
Yeah, I like that consideration about the adaptability of TameFlow.
Right.
But you know what? The life is not only work. So what is a typical day in your life like?
Well, it starts off only work because now I'm in Montreal, so I'm in North America, and with my client base currently being in Europe, I wake up around 4 a.m. and quickly get on conference calls. So I don't have the luxury of yoga, meditation, and all that fun stuff in the morning. So that has to take place in the afternoon. So working out and all that good stuff happens after my, let's say, formal work day, if you will, around 1 p.m. So I take a few hours for myself and then get back on continuous learning, of course, family time as well. So still part of a small family. And that's where I get my personal time is more in the afternoon than in the morning these days.
Yeah. So in all this, you also find time to come on a webinar. That's fantastic.
It's with the time. It's after my conveniently set after my standard workday these days. So yeah.
Okay, so it's entertainment.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. So in this career of yours and in this industry, what kind of skills or insights uh, have you developed and that you think are relevant and can maybe inspire others?
Yeah, it's basic, but simply put, it's patience. Over the several years that I've been doing this, patience is a virtue. I don't think I made that one up. I must have heard that somewhere. But really setting a strong foundation in the evolution towards faster speed to delivery with quality outcomes and true value, essentially delivering value in a timely manner. Setting that foundation to with a new mindset to get to that takes a lot of time. This is not people who think that they can come in and get a train on its rails, using a metaphor that some of you are familiar with, within a month or two. That's a pipe dream. So it's really starting small and incrementally evolving rather than seeing things as a transformation. It's an evolution. It never ends. I don't mind saying that Bell was a customer of mine, a client of mine for many years on and off. They started their journey back in 2009, and what they started saying was we need to go operational rather than project focused. So program driven, right? And I was there when that started. I was going in and out on assignments with them for about 7 or 8 more years after that announcement, if you will. And they're still evolving today, continuously. So it wasn't seen as a transformation there. And I would say that was, in my career, a best practice, something I saw. And again, it's patience. It takes time. With my current client base, I've been with several groups there for over 1.5 years now. And some of those key things, like for a coach or some of us more experienced practitioners, even the basic things like limiting work in process, things that are not necessarily intuitive, managing your intake, controlling demand is one of the things that we espouse in TameFlow. these things take time. And I'm starting to see that after a year and a half, where it's not just me up on a soapbox, but it's those people in those groups, they're the knowledge workers all the way up to senior management, starting to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk as well.
Yeah, so looking forward in like in the industry and also in your professional future development, what challenges do you see? What techniques do you prefer? And of course, where does TameFlow fit into this vision?
The challenges I would say that I've seen and that I continue to see are this propensity, I think is the word I'm looking for, to multitasking, if you will, and treating everything as urgent. So when we want to deliver value in a timely manner, which is, by the way, my definition of agility, it's pretty simple, but we do need to push for unconventional and like I've mentioned, sometimes counterintuitive, what I like to call mental models. So things like throughput accounting, things like focusing on the constraint, or as we like to call it, Herbie, right? Again, limiting work in process. Some of these things are obvious, like reducing wait times rather than focusing on process times. Things that seem so easy but take so long to get entrenched, I would say, in a way of working.
Yeah, I forgot to ask before regarding your day, your daily life. But at the end of the day, what makes you really happy?
Yeah. Well, I've watched a few of these that you've done, Steve, and I'm going to have to just revert back to many of your guests' answers, and that would be making a difference. I really hate. Before coming on to this show today, I was thinking, what else could I say? Because it seems like everybody's saying the same thing. When you're a coach, you're a facilitator. I do consider myself a facilitator above all, by the way. Above being a mentor or even a coach, is a facilitator. And as a facilitator, you like to see people grab on to certain practices and principles, even things that you may not have brought to the table, and seeing them deliver better quality solutions, more value in a quicker time frame. Just that little thing. So it's really that making a difference. There's nothing else I could bring to the table. I'd be lying if I said anything else.
And on a similar vein, what big rewards have you had, or do you wish to get from the professional side of from the industry, so to say?
Yeah, actually, I thought about this a little bit, and it just came to me as you were asking the question again. Many years ago, I was on a very, very large program that was managed in a very tightly controlled manner. So it was command and control to the letter. And I would say well done to that respect, but it wasn't avoiding or fixing any of the problems like these, what I like to call the big bubble at the end of a project, or the project aneurysm, where everything's going to burst at the end, where people are working 24/7 for, depending on the size of the project, in this case, it was months on end to reach a certain predefined big upfront design target, if you will. And I remember saying to the VP of IT delivery, we were having a beer, and I said, I would love to be able to walk or jog across the finish line rather than sprint across the finish line, having spent every little bit of energy that I had.
Collapse on the line.
Yeah, precisely. And it's, to tell you the truth, it almost happened to me. So, it brought me to this whole mindset of agility and these principles and practices. And we could probably point to several of the key aspects in TameFlow, allowed us to not only, let's say, jog across the finish line, but it's progressive finish lines, and you're delivering value in a timely manner, as I keep saying, but there's small chunks of value rather than this big do or die target. So as I started doing this, and the very first I would say initiative was in the early 2010s, where I really did see that we could jog across the finish line. I'd had some successes prior, but it still had that it necessitated that kind of end of the line panic, if you will, or urgency. And I also remember being on a program that was we had practiced Scrum in this particular program, and the program manager, I was there as a consultant, and the program manager was disappointed, highly disappointed, because there was no big fanfare when they had delivered. And my statement to that program manager, actually program director, was this, the fact that there is no fanfare and there's no big event, we've actually delivered the value that was expected, but it was so smooth that, there was no need for this big reward system. And the entire team was relaxed in delivering this thing. So really, that's my biggest reward I've ever seen, were those occasions that got progressively more frequent of, just delivering consistently and evolving.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
It's a great story. But this stimulates another curiosity of mine at this point, because you have, of course, a long, significant experience in this industry, and I know you've been using TameFlow now for a while. So I'm just inspired to ask you another question. If you had TameFlow in the past, would you have done anything different at some point?
It may have allowed for evolving quicker with those more advanced principles that are espoused by TameFlow. So, I think I touched on this a little bit, but things like throughput accounting and focusing on throughput, and here I'm going to talk about an enterprise level type context, focusing on throughput and getting more value to your customer, increasing the customer experience, rather than the typical large organization cost control mindset. That definitely would have come in much quicker in my career, and probably be much more advanced in certain contexts if something like that had been brought in earlier, in my case anyway.
Yeah. So as you know, we have a community site with TameFlow, and it's like a site of people who are interested in TameFlow. I know you are a member there as well, but what are you hoping to give and to get out of this community?
I'd like to definitely focus on real world experience. So I remember speaking with your co-author, Dan Doiron, about a year ago, actually over a year ago now, about a year and a half ago, mentioning to Dan that I would like to build an end-to-end, really truly end-to-end use case with TameFlow from start to finish. And as you can imagine, and as you know, and as others, other more experienced coaches can imagine, we would, building an end-to-end use case and having the C-level understand and appreciate agility with the TameFlow twist would be something that I'd like to endeavor to get to and really work on getting some use cases, getting some real world experience from other coaches, and then we could tie together our own learnings so that from a pragmatic or practical standpoint, learn off of each other. So really, if that community site could focus a lot on real world experience with business leadership, that would be, I think, a home run for us.
Oh, that's great. And yes, finally, I know you have been trained by Daniel, so you are one of the few certified TameFlow trainers, and soon you will be offering TameFlow training courses, and you also have a LinkedIn handle there where people can reach you. What plans do you have in terms of TameFlow courses and offerings?
Yeah, good question. Thanks. It allows me to promote a little bit. So actually, I've had my company, if you will, or a corporation for many years, since '98 actually. And what I'd like to do So last year I created a website, my own website, and I'm building a small practice of partners. So I'm not necessarily building a firm, if you will, but a network of partners, and we will be offering TameFlow training. In fact, I do already have some TameFlow courses that I offer through the website. So for registration is on my website. And I think you have that address from ludupartners.com. So it's, I would ask any viewers to be patient a little bit. It's a website that works, and I like to think it looks good, but I'm continuing to work on it. And any feedback I can get on that would be great. But definitely through that website, I'll be offering some info training in the next quarter, 2 quarters, and of course beyond that.
Okay, and you are also on the TameFlow community. I was just checking that up to make sure I'm saying this correctly. But your handle, believe it or not, is just Mario, right?
On the community, yes, keeping it simple.
Okay, well, that's the advantage of joining a community early. You can pick your own preferred handle name.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So soon I will ask you to ask me some questions, but let's see if we have some comments coming in. Of course, we have Daniel. Well, hold on, let me turn off some of these banners so we have space for the comments. Of course, we have Daniel, who's always looking at us at a distance. He says, hello from Montreal. And, Mario, I know you like risk sharing and offering fixed bid price propositions. How do you like TameFlow in supporting this paradigm? What's the question? Interesting.
Oh, that's a tough one. You're going to have to help me out there, Steve.
Yes. Well, I think it's Daniel. He's an accountant and he's in love with Throughput accounting. So I think what he's aiming at is using Throughput accounting to actually shape the offering that you do in these situations. Now, in terms of fixed bid price, I'm not sure if that is really what we want to go for, but certainly in the theory of constraints, there are many notions that can inspire us to come up with like original value propositions that would differentiate a TameFlow offering from the competition, whether it's Safe, Kanban, or Scrum, or whatever. So let's take that as a point to elaborate, and maybe we come up with some sort of overarching strategy on how you can propose and promote TameFlow consulting services. But yeah, good point.
And there is, just to add on that one, Steve, there is definitely a lot of value in putting money where your mouth is, and I know that's what Daniel is pushing here, and I have absolutely no problem doing that. I am confident that TameFlow does offer, that true value, and taking a bit of risk there is not an issue. So if we talk about competing frameworks, if you will, or peer frameworks, I like to call them, definitely this would be a differentiator, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think we can develop that to some extent. Of course, there is always a greater risk, and the greatest risk is that the people in the company are like not responsive and absolutely unwilling to change. So it has to be. It's a proposition you can make, but with some caution, prudence, and judgment. But if the conditions are like promising, if they look good, then yes, why not? Let's do that. Okay, next
leave it to Daniel to push us on that.
Yes,
he's a good person to keep us on our toes. Steve.
No, tell me all the questions he was asking for the book. I still have nightmares. Maybe we'll get Daniel to come in and comment afterwards. So we have Aram. Hi from Armenia. Hey Aram, you're always here. Thank you for that. And okay, we have some other things from Daniel. Comment: the quality of the folks using TameFlow today is really impressing me. He's talking about you, Mario. I think that's what he
sure.
says. Daniel again, how is your engineering background impairing or slowing your understanding and adoption of throughput accounting?
That's a good question. I can take that one. I will be talking to Daniel about his questions after this, though.
He's adding, as opposed to time and materials fixed bid.
Right. So in this respect, actually, my engineering background has originally led to very traditional project management, right? Focusing on budgets, so cost, pretty much above all, scheduling and on a fixed scope rather than a fixed timeline. So I wouldn't say that it's slowed me down recently, definitely not, but it did set me down, say, a divergent path very early on in my career. And as we were talking before this, Steve, me being in wireless telecom, with the wireless industry being inherently agile, got me back on the right path, actually. So hopefully that answers Daniel's question there.
Yeah. Okay. So we're a bit late, but okay. It's your turn to ask me some questions about TameFlow, of course. What's on your mind?
Yeah. So one of the challenges that I see, the biggest challenge for all agility, let's call it evolutions or what others call transformations out there, is the mindset shift. So the mindset shift to throughput accounting is something I'd like to discuss with you, particularly in large organizations. The way I've addressed it so far is look at bringing value to your customer, or improving your customer experience faster rather than reducing the cost of your resources, be it people, be it technology. So it's really that focus on throughput as opposed to cost.
Yeah, well, excellent question. Let's, as usual, I need a whiteboard. I'm not able to express a thought without the whiteboard. So let me add the screen share here. There we go, and find a whiteboard. Should come up here. So I think that your focus on operational throughput is the right approach, at least for the time being, until we will have developed some of those propositions you were saying before that address exactly this question. So what can you do to make this happen faster? And I think we hinted at this in a recent Campfire talk. But it's worth delving in deeper. So we have our beloved diagram of work against time, and of course our CFD, and we know that it's the operational throughput that really matters. And you will certainly be able to improve operational throughput by applying all the notions you have in TameFlow and also in other schools of thought, and that's good. But you will never get to the accountants in the room or in the building with that alone. So the way I typically address this is to expand on the full kitting phase. The full kitting phase is where we want to create the meeting of the engineering team and, guess what, the finance team. And how would that actually work? We will draw another diagram which is still on the same timeline, but will have a different vertical axis, which is the dollar axis. And if we are having on the portfolio backlog a move consisting of, let's say, 3 work items. That these 3 work items are inside one move. So we are having like, let's surround this. This is one move. We will ask the. Let me see if I can select this properly. We will ask the business side to actually come up with an economic evaluation of this same move. In practice, what we want to arrive at is to be able to compute or to have the financial throughput on the same table, in the phase where we are negotiating, so to say, where business is negotiating with engineering. It's exactly the same concept. So there is like this consistency. We want to realize this amount of work, and of course with that throughput, with little slow and everything, we will arrive at that time. Conversely, we want to put a dollar sign here so that we know how many dollars we will make by that time. And the like hard face negotiation that has to happen here is to be very clear that, hey business, you are asking us in engineering to estimate this time, but we know that with TameFlow we don't estimate, we use probabilistic forecasting, so it's all of a sudden it is easy for engineering to come up with that time. And hey business, you're holding us accountable to estimate that time, but now we want you to be accountable to properly estimate that value. And once you start asking for that, the business side typically say, oh no, but we can't, we don't know how to, we never thought about it. They are very vague, they cannot put a dollar amount on the work they are asking. So this is where the fun begins, because this is exactly the moment where you have reason to escalate. So remember, we are always also reasoning in terms of span of control. This is our span of control on the engineering side, and yes, we can reach out to our sphere of influence and try to talk the business side into doing this. But if that is not enough, then we escalate the whole issue to the CEO and say, hey CEO, we have a problem. We would like to work this way. Why? Because if we're able to come up with an estimate of this throughput, excuse me, if we come up with an estimate of that throughput, financial throughput, then we can prioritize and do the work that is most valuable. But we have a problem because that value is not being quantified. Do you feel comfortable that we will expend our engineering resources on doing something that the business side is not capable or willing to quantify? And thereby you create certainly a pressure from the CEO to get this going, and that process allows you to bring the notion of financial throughput to the attention of the CEO. So that's how I would do it today with the existing means that I and Daniel have described in the book. I don't know, does that answer your question, sort of?
It does, sort of. It definitely resonates. And I can give an example of where I am today. My customer is a tier 1 wireless provider, in Europe. And essentially, the group I'm with is responsible. Their value stream is end-to-end bringing new resources into the network. And with new resources come potentially new revenues. So they're already you're thinking in the way of throughput. So bringing new revenues, getting your assets to return some investment, of course, get that return on investment. So I think in that context, this is a relatively easy sell, to be honest, or at least it's an easy cycle to get to illustrate. Whereas in other environments where I've been, we're focusing more on moves. This could be could be challenging as well, because there's not always an easy, let's say, link between what we're delivering and customer experience, like where I am currently. So if we take the approach of moves, again, a TameFlow approach, is there a difference here, or should we add something to that?
Well, the reason why we have a move is actually very deep. So I would say that you could probably not do TameFlow unless you have a move. So it becomes like a necessary condition to be able to apply this kind of reasoning. Now, of course, I hear the next question on why do you really need a move, and it goes back to some subtleties of how we place the move buffer. Why do we have the move buffer? Because we want to have work signals. Why do we have work signals? Because we want to rewire the nervous system of the organization so that the right information reaches the correct level in the company where we can have intervention. But if you want to have these signals that originate from the buffer penetration events, we must be able to place the buffer on a timeline. Maybe I should draw this because I'm just talking too much. Do you agree? Is it better with a schematic?
Definitely better with the drawing, especially for me.
So the question here is now why do we have this move? We drawn it before, so this is a move. Why do we need it? Well, we have our timeline, and we want to have the buffer signal. So we have our buffer on our timeline at a certain point, and what we want to achieve is that we want to detect when there is an event here, so that we can trigger off a signal that goes up to the CEO in the worst case scenario. This is the whole reason of having buffers, to create like the synapses of a new nervous system that can reach like the decision center of the company. And where does the move come in here? Well, when we are having our burn-up chart, we want to arrive at that point. We have our burn-up chart, and we are making like the linear projections. For the linear projection to be valid, we must make some assumptions, and they are based on the validity of Little's law. Depending on how much the conditions of Little's law actually apply, the position of this buffer could be like more to the left or more to the right. So it influences the sensitivity of these signals going up to the CEO. There are a few conditions which are interesting. In particular, when we are at the beginning and at the end, so when the working process goes from 0 here and moves through this pile and then is 0 again, in those two moments when WIP is 0, Little's law is applicable exactly. So it's not between the average values, but between the actual values, which would mean, for instance, that this buffer, we draw that line, the buffer would have to be placed here. On the other hand, because in the execution of this work, remember it's knowledge work, we have a lot of interactions between people. Interactions introduce instability. So this notion that Little's law is applicable falls because the system is no longer stable. And if it's no longer stable, we must try to keep it stable. How do we do that? We know that when we have the diverging lines, we want to bring that line down so it becomes parallel. How do you do that? You limit WIP. And of course, how do you do that for TameFlow? You do that with the DBR. So at this point, by limiting WIP, we are reintroducing a condition of stability, but because it's no longer the start and the end point, the buffer like shifts to the right and probably becomes wider. So this is the reason why we have the move. The move creates like the one extreme point, this one, to the left of which the buffer can no longer move. So this is like one extreme point of the buffer. And then with the stability part, you might identify another extreme point. So the buffer is going to be placed somewhere in between here. But all this, because of the chain of reasoning, is based on the fact that we have a target scope in the move, so that WIP is 0 in between one move and the next. I know it's quite convoluted, but this, I think, gives you the reply that the move is a fundamental building block of what we're doing in TameFlow, and you cannot take it away. Of course, introducing the move, which is a target scope, you will upset all people who fancy Scrum, who want to have variable scope and fixed timelines. But I continuously claim that fixed timelines are incompatible with knowledge work, and I think we did go into this the other day as well, because we know that knowledge work typically is a series of diverging and converging activities. It's exploration, and then it's like integration. But these phases can have different lengths. Some can be extremely short, some can be longer. So this is in no way looking any way similar to two-week sprints. If you have 2-week sprints, you might slice and dice and chop this up into bits and pieces, and you're basically interrupting the natural evolution, like expanding of exploration and convergence of knowledge work. But if you're using a move as the unit, you can clearly, if you want to like superimpose here the move diagram, you could have, this is the first move and it goes up to there. This is the second move and it goes to there. This is the third move and it goes to there. So it becomes much more attuned to the nature of knowledge work. So in short, the move is absolutely necessary in TameFlow, and I cannot see how you could possibly make good use of the TameFlow concepts without the move in order to make it like more compatible with some other approach. I don't know if that was a reply to your question.
It does somewhat, and as well, it makes me think. Not to contradict anything you're saying, Steve, but I prefer to look at outcome versus scope, because scope often gets people into the mindset of fixed set of deliverables rather than can we minimize what we deliver to get a certain outcome. But that outcome would define your move. That's the way I've been
Well, don't
adapting it.
forget. Do you remember what the abbreviation MOVE stands for?
Yes.
So what
Minimum
is that?
objective
Oh,
value effort. I did my homework, Steve.
no, minimum outcome. Outcome value
Sorry.
effort.
That's what I meant.
So that O covers what you're saying,
Right.
because what we're saying, either it is a value, so we can attribute a dollar number, or
Yep.
it is an outcome, and an outcome typically is detected by the change of behavior of some actor in or outside the system, but it must be observable. So yes, the O is there. Maybe we should add another O there and call it the move, because it must be like an observable outcome or a measurable value. But certainly what is minimal in this case is the effort. And the effort always translates into work that is executed over a period of time. Of course, you shouldn't focus blindly on the scope, because then you fall back into exactly what you were saying, like conventional project management, count the number of hours, earned value management, and so on and so forth. But this you must still like appreciate that any effort still is represented by this diagram, which is so fundamental. Now, what comes out of that work can certainly be qualified as an outcome or as a value.
Yes. Good.
Okay, let's see if we have some other comments. I lost my mouse. No, there it is. We have a few comments here. It's only Daniel this evening, so Daniel, move. We need fixed scope for incremental funding and explicit risk management. Yes, that is another point. The move becomes the unit of financial reasoning. So very, very good point. And this way we can use CCPM buffer for signaling. Yes, that's what we went through. And incremental funding requires fixed scope for explicit risk management. That was the same as before. Okay, I think that there is no other comment as far as I can see. So do you have any other observations that you would like to add? We have a few more minutes.
No, I'm just actually trying to think. I'm going to go back to my notes, see if there was something else that I wanted to discuss today. Because, of course, this falls under my continuous learning portion of my day, Steve, so I need to make the most out of it, don't I?
Okay.
Let me see. Yes.
So let's see if maybe is Daniel willing to come in and just say hello. Let's see if he comes in. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway, yeah, he says yes. So let's see if he joins here. You got the link. While we are waiting, I'm really excited that you are going to start with the offering of training, and looking forward to that. Oh, we have Daniel coming in here. Hello, Daniel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Daniel.
Yes. How are you? Do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
How
Can
are
you hear me?
Yes,
We can
yes,
hear
we
you,
hear
yeah.
you.
Okay, good.
So, any comments on this session with Mario? Do you hear us, Daniel?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm doing fantastic. Actually, how are you doing, Mario?
Great.
I can hear you. I can hear.
Yes.
We're using sign sim.
So I know, actually, now that Daniel's on, maybe the next topic, we have time for one more topic, yeah?
Yeah, sure. We have another, what is it? Almost 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So if we talk about working on a wait time as opposed to working on process time in the early stages, right? As we hit the low-hanging fruit. Again, a large organization type context for you, Steve. If often wait time is driven by policies. So policies can come from regulatory bodies that are external to the organization. Those are a lot harder to work on, for sure. But even internally, there are policies that in certain contexts are quite rigid. So working on those policies, currently I'm working with one of my clients is a German client. And as you can imagine, in Germany, they're quite strong, quite effective, but with effectiveness, at least traditionally, comes these heavy policies. Any sort of practical experience that you guys can bring to the table, or that we could discuss in influencing those organizations and those groups that might have these rigid policies that result in extended wait times. And maybe it has to do with the move and showing the value of reducing that wait time. Long-winded question, but essentially it's wait time on things that may be perceived out of our control because they are policy-driven.
Well, I think the answer is covered by that notion of your span of control and sphere of influence. Of course, if you're talking about external entities like workers' union, which in Germany are very very strong and often impose restrictions on what you may or may not do. You can only resort to the influence that you or the organization or the CEO of the organization might have with respect to these external entities, and often it becomes a matter, yes, of negotiation. And at times negotiations don't go in your favor, so that is like a hard pill to swallow. But that is the reality that you have to accept. On the other hand, if it is an internal policy, then the way to address it is to escalate this all the way up to the CEO and show how that fundamental question of gold run to make money today and in the future can better be attended to if that policy is more, let's say, financial throughput focused, assuming, of course, that the goal is to make money today and in the future. Every company has the freedom to decide what their own goal is, but whatever it is, it should be quantifiable, and you can reason in terms of goal units. So you escalate until you get to the top, and there any reasoning that improves goal throughput must obviously be well accepted. Otherwise, the alternative would be going against achieving that goal. That's my answer. I don't know, Daniel, do you have any comments on that?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. I just wanted to come back to Mario's statement at the beginning regarding fixed bids and everything. I didn't want to put you on a hard spot, but I remember once we talked and you said, I like going in and proposing fixed bids to the customer and getting in and getting out. Like that wasn't in that country. At the time, you were with a company that was doing time and material, and you wanted to, hey, can we do fixed bids? You remember that?
Yes. Well, eventually that evolved quite quickly to fixed bid, and we actually showed that we could even return money to their customer, delivering, the value in a timely manner.
Okay, I didn't get that. I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah. No, but that came later, Dan. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because what I like basically is that usually with fixed bid, there's always a lot of discussions and altercation and confrontation as to what's in scope, what's not in scope, and this and that. And a variance analysis, basically, to put it mildly. But something that comes out from throughput accounting is that there's no variance analysis. It's out of this part of the conflict is totally out of the equation. And I think that it rejuvenates the concept of making fixed bid, because basically the path to improvement is locked in and guaranteed, and there's no point and getting to the eternal infightings of fixed bid contract. That was the thing that I wanted to make a twist, because now in IT and consulting, we're all time and material, and I think it's a constraint that needs to be broken.
Yeah. Good.
Well, definitely the structure and the customs of the industry are shaping also what the acceptable work contracts, working contracts are. So this is like a broader question which we might want to address in some more structured way, because we are running out of time here, just a few more minutes. But I see we got a comment at the last moment from Rudiger, who says, what sort of durations do you see for the sprints? Well, I'm not sure I understand the question, but the moves, as I call them, have the duration that they need. So it's based on the probabilistic forecasting, and we are not speculating on whether an amount of work can fit inside a 2 weeks bracket or not. And then when it doesn't fit, we like roll over the excess to the next sprint, with the really bad effect that we are killing out information about variability. So we are basically ruling out the possibility of using buffer management. We are ruling out work signals. We are ruling out creating informational flow towards and back to and from the top. So even though we have a flavor of TameFlow, which is TameFlow Scrum, and that was developed primarily by Wolfram Muller, the co-author of the first book. So we are able to adapt the notions of TameFlow to Scrum. I still contend that the fixed time box nature of Scrum is counterproductive for effective, high-performing knowledge work.
Actually, Steve, I can expand on that as well to support what you're saying, and it's in my current context. We did find, and we have the data to show this, that our flow times, for others who know it as lead time, were actually longer when we had tighter control, and I use the word control intentionally here, on these time boxes that we called sprints, and they were actually 1 month long in that case. And they had become just an overhead that people were seeing as deadlines and, I'll be very honest, consistent failure points, rather than focusing on getting value out, or that minimum outcome that we talk about with the move. So the team actually decided, big team here, 40 people, decided to go move on and remove that overhead. So Rudiger, in that case, the sprints had become, what they are today is they're just monthly touch points. They're not sprints per se. But we do synchronize every month and every quarter. That's something similar to SAFe. But we did remove the notion of formal sprints.
It would be great to, if possible at all, to see that kind of data, because I think that makes a whole difference to relate to real data. And maybe it goes back to what you were saying about the community, to use the community to exchange real cases, exchange information in as much as it is possible, of course, because we all have our confidentiality agreements with clients and what else. But it will be really
But
interesting.
I have just a final point, Steve, and I really like the way that you describe time as having only 1 degree of freedom. It only unrolls in one direction, as opposed to scope, which can go AWOL in 20,000 directions. And it's a tribute to inherent simplicity. And I think people really gotta dig this and let go of those stupid sprints.
Yeah, of course, it's an uphill battle with Scrum proponents, but I'm sure that once you start making economic arguments for this, and with throughput accounting and financial throughput rate and so on, we have plenty of those arguments to make. When this comes to the attention of the CFOs and the CEOs, it will be an easy argument to win. And we're running out of time, but Daniel, Rudiger made a comment for you. Nice haircut, Daniel.
Okay, now, Mario
Rudiger is
Latreille-
braver than me. I wanted to say it. Thanks, Rudiger.
No. There's a story to this, okay? In Montreal, I can't get my hair cut because it's a closed city. And Mario somehow was cheating because he has short haircut. Are you cheating?
I have a
Mario?
daughter. I have a daughter who likes to cut my hair.
Okay, because I thought you were cheating. So anyway, I'm in Magog now, an hour and a half away from Montreal. And this morning I walked in, man. I said,
So, did you use a
Rudiger,
chainsaw
thank
for
you
that?
so much. Thank you so much, Rudiger.
Rudiger comments again, getting rid of sprints will be difficult. Yes, and that's why I say, apply what
Okay.
we are teaching.
I really, actually, Steve, allow me just to, I'll end with this, I promise.
Yeah.
Rudiger, you're right. When we have this fixed mindset of, we were taught Scrum and Scrum is supposed to do this or that. I'm not against Scrum, don't get me wrong. But in showing the data points, and I wish I had time to go pull it up, but we could actually see that our delivery throughput increased dramatically. It was an experiment because, again, it came down to consistent failure points. We were coming to demos and the team felt bad, and it was demotivating the team because they weren't delivering everything that they thought they were supposed to be delivering. So it was these consistent failure points that brought us to a point where I said, guys, let's just try without sprints for 1 quarter. And immediately we saw the throughput go up within the first month. So it just taking that pressure off of people allowed them to actually deliver quicker. So and Rudiger, if you want, I can send you a screenshot of the effects of that. I'll just remove all of the confidential information, and you'll see clearly that our rate of delivery just goes up in a noticeable manner as soon as we got rid of it.
Put it up on the community site so we can all all see that. Yeah, but I like your expression, consistent failure points, and
I love it.
certainly if you can negotiate with the teams to try things without sprints, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
But this is also one of the returning things that I always raise, both against Scrum and against Kanban, that both claim one, that it's about being empirical and inspect and adapt, and the other one says that what's principle 6, whatever, we have to proceed with a scientific approach and do experiments. Well, then the point is, why don't you have the courage to experiment with your own, let's call it process structures, and just let the data decide, rather than having these holy wars of like mine is bigger than yours, and it's just an opinion against another opinion. So that's one way to deal with it. The other one that I was aiming at is in all these cases, if you are in a situation where you have the fundamentalists and they will not deviate from the given defined process, method, Scrum, whatever, then just reason in terms of sphere of influence, get up to the CEO, and start reasoning in terms of financial throughput. There is no way that Scrum or Kanban can counter that kind of argument unless they adopt the very essence of TameFlow. Okay, I think we're at the end. We're having Rudiger saying something, looking forward to seeing the data if we can, and would be great to get that on the community site. Yes, okay, thank you, Rudiger. And I think we will end here. So thank you very much, Mario. It was a great set of questions you asked. And thank you, Daniel, for showing your great French fashion haircut. I could always say you've been in Paris, but okay.
I didn't pay a lot for it.
Okay.
Good. Thanks,
so
you did get your value for your money there.
Rudiger says something. The agile schools of thoughts are rather entrenched in a marketing war. Mine is better than yours. Exactly. That's right.
Rudiger, I don't even entertain those discussions at all. So it's a good point.
Exactly. Okay, guys.
Salut, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.